Welcome to the John Clamp Show, episode number 17. I'm going to be giving my college football playoff outlook heading into conference championship weekend before all those games are played and before the college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday night. They will be the last rankings that come out before Selection Sunday next weekend on December 7th. I sent a post out. I'm going to have 4 episodes out this week. This is the first one. I'll have one tomorrow giving my talking about which teams I believe actually can win 3 or 4 playoff games en route to a national championship, and then talking about some other teams as well and why they may or may not be able to. Wednesday, I'm going to give my rankings reaction to the college football playoff rankings that come out tomorrow night on Tuesday. And then Thursday, I'm going to give my my conference championship game picks and previews for this weekend. So, like I said, this episode, it's going to be the college football playoff outlook at the moment. In my opinion, there are 6 teams that are locks for the college football playoff right now, regardless of what happens this weekend in the conference championship games. Could be 7. We'll get into that later, but 6 locks for sure. And I have them written down here. The teams I think are locked in right now are Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, and Texas A&M. I don't see them falling out of the playoff, regardless of what happens on Saturday. Where they'll be seated remains to be seen, whether they get a bye week or a bye in the first round, whether they get a home game or whether they have to go on the road. So seeding still up in the air. As far as participating in the playoff, those are 6 teams I don't see falling out regardless of what happens. There are 2 other auto bid spots that will be taken up by a group of 5 champ and either the ACC champ or another group of 5 champ. Duke did make the ACC championship game. If they win the ACC, I don't think the ACC champ is going to get into the playoffs. I think it'll be 2 group of 5 champions. The winner of the American Championship is pretty much a lock, North Texas or Tulane. If Duke wins the ACC, then James Madison from the Sun Belt will probably get another playoff auto bid and be a second group of 5 team represented. If Virginia wins the ACC, they'll be the other playoff auto bid. So that will be 8 spots that are taken up so far. So it's going to come down to 4 at-large spots. The teams that are competing for those 4 at-large spots right now are Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Miami, Alabama, Texas, BYU, and Vanderbilt. Based on how they've been ranking teams so far, the College Football Playoff Committee, it appears that BYU is going to have to win the Big 12 to get into the playoff. They're a 1-loss team right now, surrounded by a bunch of 2-loss teams, and they're currently on the outside looking in. I don't see them getting into the playoff if they lose the game on Saturday. So they pretty much have to win the Big 12 and get an auto bid to get a spot. So we can say, for now, for this exercise, we'll eliminate them from getting an at-large spot. Alabama is currently the last team in the playoffs right now at an at-large spot. If they win the SEC, they'll be in. If they lose the SEC championship game, they'll be 10-3. I think they'll be out. I think there are other teams that would win direct head-to-head competitions or comparisons with Alabama if they don't win the SEC championship game. I think Texas would win a direct comparison with Alabama, 9-3 and 10-3. I think Texas would win that. Miami at 10-2, the way they've looked recently, versus an Alabama at 10-3. Alabama struggled a little bit recently. I think Miami would win a head-to-head comparison. Obviously, Oklahoma and Notre Dame, two lost teams, all 10-2. Alabama's 10-2 at the moment now. Alabama's not going to jump Oklahoma or Notre Dame if they lose the SEC championship game and go to 10-3. So Alabama, if they lose the SEC championship game, they're out of the playoffs. So Alabama, I think, has to get an auto bid to get into the playoffs, just like BYU. They lose the championship games, they're out. So eliminating those two, the at-large spots come down to Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Miami, Texas, and Vanderbilt. Well, Vanderbilt is currently behind 2 lost Miami, 2 lost Oklahoma, 2 lost Notre Dame. Will they jump, or will Texas jump them after beating Texas A&M? I don't know. It's highly possible. Vanderbilt doesn't have a marquee win on their schedule, and they lost to Texas. Texas has 3 marquee wins on their schedule. They could probably jump Vanderbilt with the head-to-head win and the resume comparison being better than Vandy's. Vandy's probably not going to get in that large spot, so they're eliminated there. So now it comes down to Texas, Miami, Oklahoma, Notre Dame. One of Texas' big wins is 17-point win over Oklahoma. However, Texas also has very bad loss to Florida, a blowout loss to Georgia, and by no means is Georgia a bad loss, but the fashion in which Texas lost that game by 25, that makes it a bad loss. If it was a close game, it's a lot easier to overlook. It was not a close game. Georgia dismantled Texas. That's going to be hard to overcome, having that blowout loss to Georgia and a really bad loss to Florida, even with the marquee wins. I don't think Texas is going to jump Miami with the way Miami's looked recently, and the committee really valuing eye test over resume to this point with their rankings. Miami's been blowing teams out. Their 2 bad losses are Louisville and SMU. Those are both quality teams, but they're not better than Miami. Miami should have won those games. So they're bad losses in that retrospect. But Miami appears to have turned a corner and is playing their best football right now. I think that they will stay ahead of Texas. Oklahoma hasn't done anything recently to deserve being dropped out of the playoff and passed up by Texas. They beat Alabama recently, and they keep winning. Albeit ugly, they're still winning. You can't punish them for that. So I think Texas is eliminated. I think Alabama and BYU are eliminated from the at-large discussion if they can't win their conference championship game, which would be an auto bid. They're not going to get an at-large spot if they lose. So they're eliminated. Vanderbilt just doesn't have a win that's good enough to vault them over the teams above them. So they're out. So now the at-large spots come down to Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Miami. And there's another team that's going to be in there as well. And that's Ole Miss. What the committee does with Ole Miss, I don't know. I think they should be a lock. Remember earlier I said I think there should be 7 lock teams. Right now there's 6, I know for sure. I think that number should be 7. I think Ole Miss should be the 7th team that's a lock for the playoffs. But because Kiffin left for LSU and brought some of the coaching staff with him, I don't know if the committee is going to punish Ole Miss for that or not. I don't think they should. Will it impact their level of play? It probably will, not having their coaching staff. But the players are the ones who play the game, not the coaches, and the players have earned the right to compete in the playoff. They're 11-1. They've done what they're supposed to get into the playoff. You can't punish them and kick them out of the playoff because the coaching staff left. This situation is going to be compared a lot to Florida State in 2023 when Florida State was undefeated, 13-0, and got passed up by Alabama, who was 12-1. They got left out of, or Florida State got left out of the playoff because they were missing their quarterback. I don't think these situations are comparable. Ole Miss isn't missing any players, for one. So I don't think a team should get in because of that. Two, while I think Florida State got robbed in 2023, the committee saw them play without Jordan Travis. They saw Florida State play with their backup quarterback. And it's no secret they were not as good with their backup quarterback. They were not nearly as good with their backup quarterback as they were with Jordan Travis. While Florida State still got hosed, there was proof that they weren't as good. Here, Ole Miss isn't playing in the SEC championship game. They're 11-1. They've played their season with Lane Kiffin and the coaching staff intact. They're not going to play another game until, a bowl game or the playoffs. There's no proof that they're not as good without Lane Kiffin as they are with Lane Kiffin and the coaching staff. If the committee wants to punish them for losing their coaches to a different school, that's fine, in my opinion, as long as they don't drop them out of the playoffs completely. If they want to drop them in the rankings and therefore in the seedings to where maybe they have to go on the road instead of getting a home game, that's cool. The players still have the right to compete. They still get to compete in the playoffs, prove that they're a good team, and compete for the national championship. But you can't drop them out. So I think Ole Miss should be locked in the playoffs. I do think the committee is going to keep them in the playoffs. I don't think the committee is going to do that to Ole Miss players to where they get kicked out of the playoffs because their coach left. Because the calendar for college football is broken and it puts everyone in a predicament. I mean, Kiffin left for LSU, probably, I would assume, because he thinks that's what's best for him and his family. I mean, you can't fault him for that. The fact that he had to make that decision now sucks. You can't fault the players because he made that decision. So Ole Miss should be in the playoffs. So for this exercise or for this video, the way I'm doing this, Ole Miss is going to have a spot in the playoffs. So there's 7 locks here: Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. That's 7 spots. So that moves it down to 3 at-large spots with those 7 teams I mentioned earlier. I eliminated Vanderbilt, BYU, Texas, and Alabama. So the 3 at-large spots that I think, or the 3 teams I think are going to get those remaining at-large spots are Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Miami. As far as seeding goes, the committee's been valuing eye test over resume. I think Notre Dame and Miami might actually pass Oklahoma. So Notre Dame or Miami, or Notre Dame and Miami would be the 8 and 9 seeds, whichever, or probably playing each other in the first round for a rematch. And then Oklahoma would get the 10 spot. I think that'll happen tomorrow in the playoff rankings. I think the committee will make that change. I don't know if Miami will pass Oklahoma. I do think Notre Dame will pass Oklahoma in the rankings tomorrow, which is going to, again, create another buffer between Notre Dame and Miami, even though Miami has the head-to-head. So the comparison really is, I think it's going to be Miami versus Texas, BYU, and Vanderbilt and Alabama. I think Miami wins those as long as BYU and Alabama don't win their conference championship games. If Notre Dame passes Oklahoma in the rankings tomorrow and Alabama and BYU win their conference championship games, Notre Dame will more than likely be in the playoff, and the two getting left out are going to be Oklahoma and Miami. That's going to be controversial because while Notre Dame has them beaten eye test, which is what the committee is weighing more heavily than resume, Oklahoma smokes Notre Dame in resume. Miami has looked good in eye test and has a win over Notre Dame with the same record. So that's going to create controversy. But with how they've ranked them so far, I think Notre Dame's going to be safely in if they pass Oklahoma. If they don't pass Oklahoma and Alabama and BYU win, Notre Dame and Miami are going to be out of the playoff. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think the three teams that are going to get the at-large spots are going to be Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Miami. And really, it's just going to come down to seeding because I do think Texas Tech is going to beat BYU and Georgia is going to beat Alabama. So at the moment, I think the playoff is going to have these 12 teams. It's going to be Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Miami, Virginia, because I think they'll beat Duke, and then North Texas or Tulane. I think North Texas will get the G5 representation. Those are 12 teams that I think will be in the playoffs, and I think that's how the playoff is going to shape itself out with the rankings that come out tomorrow and then with the game results on Saturday. Alabama and BYU winning their conference championship games this weekend is going to create a lot of mess and chaos for that last at-large spot. If they win, there's going to be one at-large spot with Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Miami probably being the three teams that are being discussed for that bid. As a Notre Dame fan, I want it to be Notre Dame, and I think they're better than Oklahoma and Miami. But that last at-large spot is going to be very important, and the rankings tomorrow are probably going to tell us who's going to get that bid. That's going to do it for episode 17. Like I said earlier, this is the first of 4 episodes this week. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going through a list of teams that I think are true national title contenders and can make a run in the playoffs, and then some other notable teams I'm going to bring up as well, but they might have a major weakness or whatnot that I don't think they can overcome. That's going to be tomorrow's episode, and I got 2 more on Wednesday and Thursday that are going to come out. It's a busy week. The season is coming to a close here. Get more chaotic here at the end of the year. Selection Sunday is less than a week away. So turn the notifications on. You won't want to miss those episodes. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. And I'll see you next time on The John Clamper Show.